This time on Dreddit.
Am I the asshole for not catering to dietary restrictions? I, 36F, hosted a small gathering yesterday for the families on our street. I love baking and I've been trying to perfect baklavas of late, so I whipped some up for the party to gather feedback. Lots of these families have kids as well, so I made some homemade chocolate chip cookies too, since I know how picky kids can be. My 4-year-old son's a bit of a nightmare, haha, and thought that it would probably be a safer and more familiar option for them. One neighbor called me the night before to inform me that his wife has a nut allergy. I told him that was no problem, I'd be making chocolate chip cookies too and she was welcome to eat those instead. He went on about how much his wife really wanted to try the baklava, and asked if I could prepare some kind of nut-free variation for her. I explained to him that the nuts are a pretty important component of the dessert and making it without them would just be like eating dough. I also explained to him that baklava is very time and labor consuming to make, and I don't think that there would be enough people to justify making an entire separate batch. I reminded him again that I would be making chocolate chip cookies, completely nut-free, and that those took a lot less time to make, so I could easily make multiple batches throughout the gathering if I needed to. He and wife show up to the party and when I bring out the baklava tray, he eyes me before pulling me aside to ask why I hadn't made nut-free baklava for his wife. I reminded him that I never said I was going to do that, but she was welcome to help herself to the cookies. He then accused me of not caring about his wife's dietary restrictions, or not caring if she dies. I told him that I did care, and that was why I was willing to let her have some cookies, even though I had mostly made them for the kids. He went on about well she doesn't want cookies, she was looking forward to the baklava. Yeah, turns out he told her that I'd be making a separate nut-free batch. I pulled the wife aside and explained to her that I never said I'd be doing that, her husband made that up. She helped herself to a cookie but seemed a bit disappointed. Should I have just sucked it up and made a nut-free one?
Am I the asshole for no longer letting my mother-in-law watch my daughter after she kept throwing away the food I sent? I'm a widower and have a 6-year-old daughter who's a very picky eater and got worse after her mother's passing. She loved her mother's cooking and refused to eat anything that isn't made by her mother. I decided to learn to cook her favorite meals that my wife used to cook, and my daughter has been loving my version of her mother's cooking. I recently started working a new job and my mill started watching my daughter 3 days a week. I have my sister helping, so I'm doing good. I prepare meals for my daughter to take with to her grandparents' house so my mill won't have to worry about what my daughter can and cannot eat. My mill complained about the meals I send and said I needed to encourage my daughter to eat from a variety of dishes. I already explained how my daughter is when it comes to food and that I'm already learning new dishes every week so it's not repetitive. So last week I discovered that my daughter has been eating only snacks for days at her grandparents' house. She told me this and I was confused. I asked about the meals I send with her and she said her grandma would take them from her hand once I leave, throw them in the trash can, then tell her to eat dishes she makes. My daughter refused and has been only eating snacks at that house. I was enraged. I confronted my mill and she said that she didn't find that me sending meals with my daughter was the right thing to do and wanted her granddaughter to eat her cooking and was upset that she refused. She said it's my fault her granddaughter doesn't want to eat certain foods and that I was spoiling her rotten with this behavior. I mentioned to her that the meals she threw away were my wife's recipes and that I struggle so hard to provide those meals, as well as taking time to learn to cook them. She stated I wasn't doing good job parenting and needed to get a grip because she's feeling concerned about how spoiled my daughter is being because of me. I eventually told her I won't let her watch my daughter from now on and decided to ask my sister for help. Phil and Sil kept calling me cruel for not letting them see their granddaughter, and Phil said that I overreacted and promised to convince his wife to let my daughter eat what she wants as long as she visits, but I refused to discuss it because right now I really don't take what they say face value.
Am I the asshole for getting upset at my girlfriend for exposing my lie? If I eat something that I don't like, my nostrils flare. It's involuntary and I can't stop it from happening, but at the same time it's not super obvious if you're not looking for it. As a result, my parents know about it and my girlfriend knows. Anyway, earlier today I met my girlfriend's family for the first time, so I was pretty nervous and wanted to make a good impression. It turns out her mum had made a dish I detest. I'd never order it out of choice and it has some ingredients I hate. But, given the fact I'm an adult, and wanting to come across well, I decide not to say anything and just eat what was served. I take a spoon and it was awful, but I carry on. When GF's mum asks me how I like it, I say it's very good. At this point, GF says haha he's so cute when he lies, mum he hates it, look at how his nose goes when he has a spoon. At this point I just had another spoon and her mum noticed, and it was very awkward from then on in. I tried to apologize, but she kept beating herself up on how silly she was to make something and not ask. Her dad told me I was being rude by making my dislike apparent and that it was poor manners. After that the whole meal was a bit awkward and after we left I was upset and asked my GF why she couldn't have just backed me up a bit, or even not exposed my fib. Like, yeah I didn't want to eat it, but I'd have forced myself through and then it would have been over. She said I was being dramatic and that it was actually quite funny, but I see it as sort of throwing fuel on what was already a pretty stressful event for me.
You